Father in heaven, as we open your word today and step into the message of Daniel 10, we ask for clarity where there is confusion, peace where there is anxiety, and strength where there is weakness. Daniel and the Invisible War. Daniel had lived long enough to see empires rise and empires fall, and yet, the older he grew, the more he understood that earthly kingdoms were never the real story. The temple in Jerusalem was being slowly rebuilt, but progress had stalled. Opposition was fierce. Hope for many was fading. And Daniel, though far from his homeland, felt every ounce of that burden in his soul. It is the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia. Scripture states this directly in Daniel 10:1, grounding the moment in history. Cyrus had authorized the Jews to return and rebuild, yet most had not gone. And those who had gone were encountering resistance so discouraging that even bold hearts were beginning to crumble. Daniel was not physically in Jerusalem to help them, but spiritually, emotionally, and prophetically, he carried their struggle like a fire in his chest. He knew God was moving. He also knew that darkness does not retreat quietly. For 3 weeks, Daniel entered a period of mourning. The text says in Daniel 10:2-3 that he ate no choice food, no meat, no wine, and he used no lotions. This was not a ritual fast, it was grief. Something pressed on him, something heavy, something unseen, something he could not yet articulate. The delay in Jerusalem troubled him, but the agitation in his spirit suggested something deeper. It felt as if the whole world was trembling on the edge of a revelation. He continued to pray. Day after day, he placed himself before God, and with each passing morning, the sense of expectation grew. They were preparing to open. Then, on the 24th day of the 1st month, Daniel stood beside the great Tigris River. Scripture gives this detail plainly in Daniel 10:4, drawing us into the physical scene. Daniel was not alone. Men were with him, but what he saw next was not meant for their eyes. He lifted his gaze and the world seemed to split open. A figure stood before him, not walking, not approaching, but simply there, suddenly, impossibly, overwhelmingly present. This was not a human messenger. This was a being clothed in the glory of God's presence. If this word is encouraging your faith, hit like and consider subscribing. It truly helps the message go further. The men with Daniel could not see the vision, yet they felt its weight. Terror fell upon them, and they fled, though they did not understand why. Daniel 10:7 says that Daniel alone saw the vision, yet the others were overwhelmed by a great terror. Even the echo of divine presence was enough to undo them. Daniel remained standing, but only for a moment. Strength drained from him. His face grew pale, his body trembled, and eventually he collapsed, overwhelmed, unable to stand before such holiness. Daniel 10:8 records it simply, "I had no strength left." The prophet who had faced lions, confronted kings, interpreted dreams, and survived empires, found himself undone by the nearness of heavenly glory. The visitor spoke, and his voice roared like the sound of many waters. It roared through Daniel's bones, heavy with authority. Daniel 10:9 says, "When I heard him, I fell into a deep sleep, my face to the ground. It was more than sleep, it was the collapse of a mortal body before immortal radiance. But then something remarkable happened. A hand touched him, not with force, not with judgment, with tenderness." Daniel 10:10 says, "The hand set me trembling on my hands and knees." The glory was overwhelming, but the touch was gentle enough to lift him. Heaven's majesty and heaven's mercy met in the same moment. The messenger spoke again, and his first words were not commands, they were reassurance. "Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, consider carefully the words I am about to speak." Daniel 10:11. "You, Daniel, loved Daniel. In his old age, weakened from fasting, trembling with fear, Daniel was reminded that heaven's affection had not dimmed with time. But then came the words that would change Daniel's entire understanding of spiritual reality. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard. Daniel 10:12. The first day, the very first day Daniel began to pray, heaven responded. The answer was sent immediately. The delay was not because God was slow. The delay was not because Daniel's prayer was ignored. The delay came from something Daniel never imagined. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Daniel 10:13. With that single sentence, the curtain lifts. Reality opens. Daniel discovers that prayer is not simply spoken on earth, it is fought over in heaven. The Prince of Persia is not Cyrus, nor a human leader, but a spiritual power, a demonic intelligence assigned to influence and manipulate the empire. For 21 days, the exact length of Daniel's mourning, this dark power fought to block the heavenly messenger. Daniel had been praying and feeling nothing, seeing nothing, hearing nothing. But in the realms he could not see, a battle was raging. The angel continued, Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me. Daniel 10:13. Michael, the one scripture identifies as the great prince and defender of God's people, Daniel 12:1. The one whose very presence turns the tide. The one who scripture reveals as no mere angel, but the divine commander of heaven's armies. He entered the conflict, and the moment Michael arrived, the spiritual opposition broke. This explanation reshaped Daniel's understanding of reality, and it should reshape ours. Daniel learned that prayer is not a monologue. It is warfare. It engages the entire cosmos. Angels move, demons resist, heaven responds. And the humble prayers of a grieving old prophet in Persia were weighty enough to trigger a heavenly intervention. The messenger then told Daniel that he had come to give him understanding about what would happen to his people in days to come. Daniel 10:14. The prophecy Daniel was about to receive would stretch from the kings of Persia to the rise of Greece, and from earthly conflicts to the vast spiritual war playing out behind human empires. What Daniel saw in chapter 8, the ram, the goat, the little horn, was not abandoned or forgotten. Heaven was returning to finish the explanation. Daniel 10 is the doorway into Daniel 11 and 12, the unfolding of events leading all the way to the final time of trouble. But before the explanation could continue, Daniel collapsed again. The glory was too heavy. The message was too weighty. His humanity, old, frail, tired, could not carry the load. Daniel 10:15 says, I bowed with my face toward the ground and was speechless. Heaven's messenger touched his lips, strengthening him just enough to speak, just enough to breathe. Then Daniel voiced what was heavy in his heart. My strength is gone, and I can hardly breathe. Daniel 10:17. It is one of the most human moments in the entire book. Daniel, the prophet of integrity and courage, confesses weakness. He is overwhelmed. He is undone, and heaven does not rebuke him for it. Instead, Daniel 10:18-19 says, The vizier touched him again and told him, Do not be afraid. Peace, be strong now, be strong. The touch imparts courage. Daniel is lifted by divine compassion, not human resolve. At the end of the chapter, the visitor tells Daniel that he must soon return to battle the Prince of Persia and later the Prince of Greece. Daniel 10:20. The war behind nations would continue. Empires on earth would rise and fall. But behind each movement were spiritual powers, some dark, some heavenly, shaping the tides of history. Yet the message in all this is not fear. The message is that God is not passive. Heaven is not neutral. Angels are not distant. Michael himself stands for God's people. And Daniel, old and trembling, is caught in the intersection of two worlds, the visible and the invisible, the earthly and the heavenly, the temporal and the eternal. His fast had not been in vain, his prayers had not been ignored. His grief had not gone unnoticed. The very moment he began seeking God, heaven moved, not because understanding has arrived, but because revelation has begun. The tension is alive. Daniel stands strengthened but shaken, aware that the message unfolding is larger than nations, larger than kings, larger than the moment he is living in. A war is raging over truth, over God's people, over the future, and the God of heaven has come to pull back the curtain for him. Daniel does not yet know the full reason for the overwhelming vision he has just witnessed, but something in the atmosphere around him shifts. The brilliant figure stands before him, and instead of unfolding the meaning of the vision immediately, he brings Daniel back to the moment that started everything. He reminds Daniel of what heaven saw, heard, and acted upon even before Daniel understood the weight of his own prayers. The messenger says in Daniel 10:12, "From the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard." Daniel hears this sentence with a mix of relief and awe. Heaven had not been distant. Heaven had not been slow. Heaven had not been silent. From the very first day he began to pray, before the fast had stretched to 3 weeks, before his strength had faded, before he had grown discouraged, the response had already been released. Daniel learns that his prayer did not simply travel upward, it was answered immediately. The messenger continues, "I have come because of your words," Daniel 10:12. These words do not paint prayer as a ritual, they describe it as a cause. Daniel's prayers set something in motion, something real, something powerful, something resisted. Then the message takes a turn that Daniel could never have imagined. The messenger says in Daniel 10:13, "But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. Daniel's mind must have flooded with questions. What did that mean? How could a heavenly messenger be resisted? What is this prince of Persia? And why would he oppose a message meant for an aging prophet in exile? Daniel knows Persia. He has served its kings. He has witnessed its power. But this is no earthly prince. The language, the context, the struggle, all point to a spiritual power, a hostile intelligence working behind political structures. Daniel is being told something he had never fully seen before, that world events are not shaped only by human decisions or by the ambitions of empires. They are influenced, resisted, accelerated, and hindered by unseen forces, both loyal and rebellious. The study of Daniel 10 emphasizes that this prince of Persia represents satanic influence over the kingdom. It is not Persia's king who fights a heavenly messenger. It is the spiritual power. Daniel is being shown that the great conflict in the universe touches earthly governments, affects decisions of kings, and influences the destiny of nations. The messenger tells Daniel that this resistance lasted 21 days, the exact length of Daniel's fast. The parallel is not coincidence. Daniel had been fasting, mourning, and praying. At the same time, an invisible conflict had been raging around him. His waiting had not been wasted. His silence had not been ignored. His weakness had not been pointless. While Daniel fasted on earth, heaven fought in the unseen realms. Then comes the most astonishing detail yet. The messenger continues in Daniel 10:13. "Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left alone there with the kings of Persia." Daniel had always known about heavenly messengers, but now he hears a name carrying divine authority. Michael, not an ordinary angel, not a created being who merely assists. But the one who is repeatedly described in Scripture as the defender of God's people, when Daniel hears the name Michael, he understands. This is not merely an angelic helper. This is the one who later, in Daniel 12, first is described as the great prince who stands watch over the children of your people. In his role as the commander of the heavenly hosts, Daniel is not being told that an angel rescued another angel. He's being told that the pre-incarnate Christ stepped into the conflict and brought decisive victory. Daniel realizes that prayer is not passive. His voice may have trembled in Babylon, but his prayers reached heaven. The struggle is real, but so is the victory that comes when Christ steps in. The messenger explains in Daniel 10:14, "Now I have come to make you understand what will happen to your people in the latter days." For the vision refers to many days yet to come. Daniel's heart must have tightened at those words. This was not merely a personal message. The stakes were prophetic. The future of God's people was involved. The vision he received was not for his lifetime only. It stretched across centuries, reaching into the time of the end. The study points out that Daniel 10 is the prologue to the detailed prophecy of Daniel 11 and the grand finale in Daniel 12. This messenger has been commissioned to deliver the most detailed prophecy Daniel will ever receive, a revelation that spans empires, conflicts, spiritual war, and the ultimate deliverance of God's people. But before Daniel can receive that revelation, he must understand the environment in which it comes, a universe in conflict. The moment Daniel hears this, his strength fails him again. The messenger touches him once more, restoring him just enough to stand. Daniel describes the moment in Daniel 10:17 when he says, "How can the servant of my Lord talk with you, my Lord? As for me, no strength remains in me now, nor is any breath left in me." Daniel is overwhelmed, not by the information, but by the presence, the glory, the weight, the holiness. It is more than human flesh can endure. Yet the messenger remains gentle, patient, and intentional. Another touch, another infusion of strength, another reminder of heaven's affection. The messenger says in Daniel 10:19, "O man greatly beloved, fear not. Peace be to you. Be strong." Yes, be strong. Daniel feels strength enter him again, not from within, but from the one who speaks peace into human frailty. This moment echoes earlier visions where God empowers prophets to receive divine revelation. Daniel understands that he stands in the presence of the commander of heaven, and that every word spoken to him carries the authority of the God who rules the universe. Then the message takes another unexpected turn. The messenger says in Daniel 10:20, "Do you know why I have come to you? And now I must return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I have gone forth, indeed the prince of Greece will come." Daniel suddenly sees that the conflict unfolding is not limited to Persia. The spiritual powers influencing the political empires of the world move in patterns parallel to the prophecies he has received. Just as Persia would one day be replaced by Greece, the spiritual forces behind these kingdoms also shift influence. This is the deepest insight Daniel has ever received into the relationship between earthly history and heavenly conflict. Behind every earthly kingdom, behind every geopolitical transition, behind every era, there are spiritual forces up the secret place, and bolts are rooted in one city and one era. The prophecy is not suggesting dualism. It is revealing the depth of the great controversy between good and evil. The messenger assures Daniel that he is not delivering a speculative idea or a philosophical concept. He is revealing the reality behind world history. He says in Daniel 10:21, "But I will tell you what is noted in the scripture of truth." Daniel hears that phrase and recognizes its meaning. It is part of the eternal counsel of God, part of a heavenly record of divine purposes that predates empires, kings, and nations. The Scripture of Truth is the divine archive of God's sovereign plan, a plan unaffected by demonic influence, unaltered by human rebellion, and unshaken by earthly power. Especially those living in the time of the end, Daniel now understands that the vision he will receive next is not merely about kings and battles. It is about the cosmic struggle that underlies human history. He stands on the edge of the greatest revelation of his prophetic ministry, and the only reason he can receive it is because heaven fought for him, strengthened him, and stood beside him. The study of Daniel 10 teaches that spiritual warfare is not fiction. It is not metaphor. It is real, continuous, and decisive. But Daniel 10 also teaches something even more important, that Christ himself stands at the center of the conflict, fighting for his people, defending his purposes, and ensuring that every prophecy reaches its fulfillment. Daniel sees that prayer is not an escape from the conflict, it is participation in it, and revelation is not given to spectators, but to those who seek God with humility, persistence, and surrender. The heavenly messenger prepares to unveil the detailed prophecy recorded in the next chapter. But before he speaks, Daniel now knows the truth behind all of history. No earthly kingdom stands alone. No political transition happens in isolation, and no believer ever prays without heaven moving in response. The unseen war is real, but so is the God who fights for his people. The same Christ who strengthened Daniel is the same Christ who strengthens believers today. Before God reveals the fate of nations, he reveals the war for the soul. Before God confirms the timeline of history, he confirms the involvement of heaven. This chapter is a reminder that spiritual warfare is not exceptional. It is constant. It is not occasional. It is ongoing. The study points out that Daniel 10 gives believers an essential principle. The moment God's people pray, heaven moves. But that movement is opposed when prayers rise, conflict rises. When God sends answers, resistance appears. Daniel learns that delay is not denial. Delay is the result of battle. And yet, regardless of the conflict, the answers still arise. Daniel still receives his message. Truth still reaches him, though it traveled through war to get there. This reassurance echoes through every generation. When you pray, your voice is not small. The Scripture of Truth secures your destiny, not the powers of darkness. The same God who touched Daniel and strengthened him touches his people today. Daniel now knows that the prophecy he is about to receive will be heavy, detailed, and far-reaching. He knows it will describe wars, rulers, persecutions, and deliverance. But he also knows that none of it exists outside God's care. None of it exists outside Christ's authority. And none of it exists without heaven fighting for those who belong to God. As this block comes to a close, Daniel stands stronger than before, grounded in truth, upheld by divine presence. He is ready to receive the revelation written in the Scripture of Truth. And through his experience, every believer is invited to remember this simple, powerful reality. You do not fight alone. You do not pray alone. You do not stand alone. When you set your heart to seek God, heaven moves. When you humble yourself, the battle shifts. When you lift your voice, Christ himself steps into the conflict. And when strength fails, God touches you and says, "Fear not, peace be unto you."